When I first heard the term oversharing in relation to autism and Asperger syndrome, first thing that came to my mind was popcorn. Because, you have some popcorn, maybe you're watching a movie and you share your popcorn with other people. And I saw that term oversharing and I thought, what, am I oversharing my popcorn or my bag of potato chips or whatever it is that I have by being too nice to people? But then I started thinking about it. No, that's not what this means. Oversharing means talking too much about yourself. And that's something that people with Asperger syndrome, people with autism, well, some of us do have a problem with that. So let's dig into it, find out what's going on here. And number one is it just kind of reaffirms, at least in my case, maybe not yours, that we have this tendency to think things in terms of the literal. So when somebody said sharing, I thought popcorn. No, that's not what it is at all. Number two is this. There is this thing called Overton window. You may have heard of this. Politicians know all about it. But for you and I, we would use the term window of discourse. And it simply means this. There are certain topics that we can talk about. And there are certain topics that are considered taboo. They're not to be spoken of. Now, politicians are really concerned about this because if they get outside what they call the Overton window, they will start talking about something that will hurt their public image. And if they're going to get elected to office, that's something they don't want to do. So they're very, very careful about what topics they will talk about. They talk about maybe the economy or education or whatever, but there's some other things that are just, why would you talk about those if they're going to cost you votes? So they don't talk about those things. Well, the same thing is true in a sense of everybody, including us, including people with autism, is there some things, well, we just shouldn't talk about. So there's some things we need to ask ourselves the question, what is appropriate in conversation and what is not? Because quite frankly, we don't always know. So we get ourselves in trouble. Number three is, why is it that, well, what's a good term for this? Why is it that we want to show our scars, so to speak? We want to talk to people about our personal lives that is really, well, first of all, it's not their business. And secondly, they probably don't care that much. But we'll talk about maybe surgeries. I don't know that that's outside the window always, but to total strangers, yeah. Say you're standing in line at the grocery store and you start showing them, I had heart surgery. You want to see my scars? Now, I don't think any of us are that dumb. Okay, maybe a few, but most of us know better than that. That would be kind of an extreme case, but it still illustrates the point that, sometimes we get outside that window. So why do we do that? That's an important question. Why would we talk about things that people have no interest in, that is not their business? It's our business. Something more likely would be talking about finances, personal finances, that you want to keep to yourself. Well, the reason that we would talk about, our surgery scars or, whatever other ailments we may have is so that we can elicit empathy, so that we can elicit sympathy, so people would feel sorry for us. And sometimes, hey, it actually works. But does that make for good conversation? Does that make for polite conversation? Does it make for social ability? And the answer is, well, maybe. It depends on who you're talking to. But we're talking about just casual conversation, not having a one-on-one with your physician, So we need to be consciously aware, and I think maybe we're not because we have this mind blindness. We need to be consciously aware that there are some things that are outside the window of discourse. So we need to maybe sit down and just think about it. Apply our brain, our cognitive skills to actually examining what is inside the window and what is outside the window of discourse. And one of the things that you don't talk about in a grocery line or in a restaurant is your surgery. Yeah, I've actually heard surgeons sitting at a table in a restaurant talking about their surgeries. I got to tell you, it's not very appetizing. It's not something, I think it's interesting, but not then and there. There's this thing called context. So number four is the reason that we sometimes get outside the window of discourse is because we just like to relate to people and we really don't know how. So we want to say something and we want to participate in the conversation, so to speak. Talk about that a little more in a moment. But we're just trying to relate to people. We want to make a connection with other people. And as you know, as a person with Asperger syndrome, that is not easy. Sometimes, well, most of the time in my case, it's downright impossible. And when you do make those connections with people, sometimes it's not a good connection because the other person often is just trying to take advantage of our vulnerabilities and our gullibilities. So just making a connection in and of itself, not necessarily a good thing. But I got to tell you, there are some things that we can talk about that just don't make good connections. We need to be aware of that if we're just trying to relate, we need to be conscious of what it is we're talking about. And the key word there, the operating word there is conscious. We need to think about it. Number 5 is sometimes we will get outside the Overton window or the window of discourse just to break the silence. You know how uncomfortable it is to be sitting with somebody and you're supposed to be talking to these people? There should be, neurotypical people would have no problem having a conversation, and you're sitting there and you can't think of anything that you should talk about. And if you do think of something, you know it's going to come out wrong, but, I thought of this. And then you start thinking about, how much money you have or how much money you don't have. You might start talking about your debts and how you're having, I'm really having financial struggles. So what is this other person thinking? Well, probably they're thinking either you're nuts or you're going to ask them, try to hit them up for money, and they really don't want to talk about that, And if you're talking about how much money you do have, if you do have an overabundance of cash sitting in a bank somewhere, you don't want to tell people that because word will get out and people start hitting you up for money. It goes the other way. So we have to keep in mind, I'm reiterating myself once again, but we got to keep in mind that there's some things you just don't talk about. We need to be conscious of what those things are, even if it means, this will break the silence. Sometimes it's better to be quiet, just to go ahead and be quiet. It's awkward, I know, but it's better to be awkward than to, it's even more awkward if you say the wrong thing. We'll put it that way. Number 6 is trying to contribute. All right, so you're in a group, and you know how this goes. You're in a group somewhere, and everyone's talking, chatting together back and forth. Maybe you're sitting around a table somewhere having dinner, or maybe, maybe you're at school or church, wherever, and everyone's having a circular conversation between a group of maybe 3, 4, maybe more, whatever, and you're left out because, you're always left out because people kind of think you're a little bit strange, and so you say, I'm going to contribute to this conversation. I'm going to be part of the conversation. So they're talking about whatever. Maybe they're talking about, maybe they're talking about NASCAR. And you say, speaking of NASCAR, did you know that I had brain surgery? No, that doesn't fit. If you know something about NASCAR and that's the conversation, okay, let's talk about it, whatever. And sometimes we will talk about our political views, and if the group is talking about politics. But we got to be careful there because, just about anything you say about politics or religion is going to make somebody mad at you. So one of the things that I do, you notice on my platforms, on my YouTube channels, 2 things I avoid like the plague is I don't talk about politics, I don't talk about social issues, and I don't talk about religion. We just leave those things out because I know I got to stay within my Overton window. I've got to stay within my window of discourse. Because if I get out of it, we're going to have some serious problems. People are going to get mad at me. So, it's okay, obviously, to contribute to a conversation, but we need to be careful what we say, and we have to kind of think like neurotypical people because they speak a different language, and we need to kind of learn their language and the nuances of what they do, and more importantly, what they don't talk about. Number 7 is sometimes we will get outside the Overton window or the window of discourse because, we just want people to get to know us. And that's perfectly okay. But I see this a lot on the internet where you'll have a chat group and somebody will be, they start getting to know each other, the people in the group, and somebody will say something about themselves that about themselves that is really kind of out of line. And you wonder, I'm not sure this person is being totally honest, and if they are, they got a problem. Well, it's okay to talk and speak up so people get to know you. Now, there's a flip side to that, by the way. I don't know if you've ever gone someplace and maybe you visit a church for the first time and somebody come up and ask your name. Okay, I'm okay with that. And what do you do for a living? I'm really not okay with that. That may have something to do with Asperger syndrome. I don't know, but it's really, my opinion is what I do for a living is none of your business. Now, sometimes I've actually said this. People say, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm a bum. And so they get a little annoyed at me. Oh, come on, what do you really do for a living? Well, they see that, I'm obviously well taken care of. So I say, well, I'm good at it. But what I'm really saying is, I don't want to talk to you. But usually they will coax me and I'll tell them, I'm retired, I owned a business and whatever. But people don't need to know that. But the point is, sometimes it goes the other way. They want to know what your name is. They want to know where you live. They want to know what you do for a living. It's like question, and you give them answer. That, in my opinion, is not a conversation. That is, what would you call that? That's being grilled and drilled. So if you are part of a church somewhere and you have a new person come to your church, rather than grill and drill them, just say, how you doing, what's your name, and just kind of leave it with that, and thanks for coming. Because people, at least, well, some people may like it, but personally, I don't like people to try to get to know too much about me when I don't know anything about them. Another trick people will use is they will tell you what they do for a living, and then it's okay for them to ask you what you do for a living. So it's kind of a trick they use. I've seen people do that before. But as a person with Asperger syndrome, the way for you to get people to know you is not necessarily to tell all the personal details about your individual life, because again, as we said earlier, that's your business, that's not their business, and who knows, they could use that against you. See those two rectangles on the screen? Let's keep talking if you want. All you got to do is click on one of those two rectangles and the conversation goes on. If not, well, thanks for stopping by and see y'all next time.